We are here about 20 minutes outside of Tagong town on this muddy, rushing river. And you can see we're at this area where these rocks have been carved with sacred Tibetan prayers. So they'll hand carve these rocks. This is a big rock. This rock is probably almost as tall as I am and probably 2 or 3 meters wide. I mean, this is a big rock. This is not a small task. And they have literally carved every single face of this rock, the top, every side, all around it. And it's carved with sacred Tibetan prayers, usually which read Om Mani Padme Hum. What's really more interesting though is actually inside the river here, there are several rocks, many hundreds, maybe if not thousands of rocks that are the same size river boulders that have also been carved with these same Tibetan mantras. Now that's pretty crazy because I'm about to fly my drone and you're going to see how powerful this river really is, which means some monk had to swim out there in the middle of this river, probably risk his life, so he could sit on a rock for who knows how many days and carve this rock and then swim back across this rushing river. This is not a tiny little stream or creek. This is a seriously powerful river, and I can imagine with the rain it would be a surging flood of power. So this is pretty crazy. We're about to fly our drone and I'll check out this footage. Woo! My feet almost went through. Okay, we're across. I thought I might go in the water there. Okay, we just crossed the terrifying bridge over the rushing river, and now we're going to have some Tibetan yak yogurt. This was just made yesterday, freshly milked out of the yak and served in this little paper cup. It's got a little sugar on it, and this should be some awesome, creamy, amazing yogurt. I love yak yogurt, and this is a nice little treat. Okay, we're here at the high grasslands in Tagong in western Sichuan Province. And this is a key area for Tibetan nomads to roam the mountains. And in general, Tibetans will live in these stone houses like the one you see behind me. They could also live in nomad tents made of yak hair, but they'll have their winter residences down here in the lower grasslands, and in the summer they'll take their yaks up to 4,000 or 4,500 meters to graze in these beautiful, lush grasslands. Most Tibetan nomads will have about 50 to 100 yaks. You can actually see some yaks all around me here in the grasslands just grazing, and they'll just kind of let their their yaks loose every day and wander the grasslands, and the yaks get to graze the grass, and then they bring them back home every night and then rope them up so that wolves and thieves cannot steal them. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Tibetan nomad life. Tibetan nomads are some of the last living nomadic cultures in the world, or semi-nomadic cultures, I should say, because sometimes in the winter they actually live in a house, but in the summer they live in tents. What does that mean? They move around roughly about every 30 days, so they let their yaks graze in an area, they eat all the grass down, and then once all the grass is basically finished for the yaks, they move to the next valley across the mountains, and then they graze there. And then they keep doing that. And so basically Tibetan nomads move with the rhythms of the grass. Okay, so why is this so important? Well, the yak is super important to the Tibetan nomad because it's basically their entire life. My Tibetan friend Sanji has this wonderful quote that says, "If we have the yak, we have enough." And what that means is the yak is everything to them, just like the buffalo would have been to the Native Americans of North America. The yak is their transportation traditionally. That's how they get across the mountains. The yak is the source of their shelter. They actually make their Tibetan tents out of black yak fur. The yak is a source of leather for their clothing and for their boots. The yak is a food staple. So that provides yak meat, it provides yogurt, it provides cheese, it provides many of the things in the Tibetan diet, especially in a place such as this, where it's so high altitude, there's no vegetables growing. It's really hard to find food out here because it's so cold and so dry and so high. So because of that, the yak is very, very important to the Tibetan lifestyle. And it's also the source of fuel, which is very interesting because as you can see up here, the altitude is so high, no trees can grow. It's too cold for them. So because of that, there's no wood out here for a fire. So how do people heat their homes? How do people cook for themselves? They actually use yak poop, which means they collect it every single day. They dry it when the sun comes out in the mountains as kind of a dried cake patty, and then they take this dried poop and they actually put it inside of their cast iron stoves and they burn it. And that's how they boil the water, that's how they cook their food, and that's how they heat their homes. And you can imagine it's such a high altitude where it probably gets -20, -25 degrees Celsius. That heat is essential to survival for all Tibetan people. So the yak is an amazing animal. Okay, speaking of yak meat, here's actually a little store that sells dried yak meat and yogurt. We're in the middle of nowhere in Tagong in western Sichuan Province. Very, very few people live out here. And here's this little store that you can just stop along the roadside. You can buy some yak meat, you can buy some fresh Tibetan yogurt, and this stuff is amazing. Okay, we're here at Lagang Monastery. This is right in the heart of downtown Tagong. And when I say downtown Tagong, it's not a big town. It's only about one street with a few thousand people in it. So this is the main monastery in the town. We're kind of standing in the Tagong Guanchang, or the main square, where they would potentially do some Tibetan dancing at night. But these days it's kind of been turned more into a parking lot. 5 years ago when I was here, it was a little bit more open, but now it's kind of like become a bit of an outdoor market / parking lot. So either way, we're going inside the Lagang Monastery and having a look. They are repaving the road here in Tagong town, and boy, is it a mud fest. What a difference from the parking lot I was just in. We just entered the monastery and it was so quiet in here. The parking lot was like crazy. There's like market vendors selling kind of cheap clothes and shoes, and people parking everywhere and driving everywhere, and huge trucks driving through the city. And we enter the monastery and it's just really quiet. So yeah, I really like being inside these monasteries. It feels really peaceful. I really like this monastery in particular. It's not huge, but I like the architecture here. The wood and the stone combination just feels really old and kind of has an antique feel. This is a really nice monastery. Definitely worth an hour of your time. Okay, behind me is an all yak wool, black yak wool curtain. This often is the covering in front of a monastery, and you can see on that curtain is the Dharma Wheel, an 8-spoked wheel representing the eightfold path of the Buddha. And this is traditionally how the Buddha would have been displayed before his, people were painting his face or thinking about what he looked like. And I mentioned that people displayed the Buddha either through looking at his footprints or looking at this Dharma Wheel. And the Dharma Wheel is kind of considered the wheel of teaching of the Buddha. So it's constantly spinning. So the idea is that the ideas of the Buddha are constantly kind of being taught or espoused to the world. And then the wheel itself is kind of thought to be sharp on the edges. So it's technically cutting through ignorance, almost like a revolving knife or something like that. So yeah, that's the Dharma Wheel. You'll see that between the deer that I mentioned earlier, the golden deer, and you'll also see it on curtains like this, and sometimes on bowls, cups, plates, clothing, decorations in houses, things like that. To be honest, Tagong is a really small town. You can see the monastery in an hour, probably. But the main reason for me to really come to Tagong is number one for Angela's guest house, or the Kamba Eco Lodge. Kham Nomad Eco Lodge. That's a great little retreat center. Also, outside of Tagong, there's a nunnery, which is very nice, with a mani stone pile, and there's also the peace stupa. Those are nice things to see outside of Tagong. Easily, you can spend a day here. Probably the only reason if you'd want to spend a couple days longer would be if you're really interested in horse trekking. This is a great destination for that. The mountains here are perfect for horse trekking. They're gentle, but really beautiful and really scenic. And you'll probably have a really good view of Yala Snow Mountain as you're trekking through the Tagong grasslands. So, say hiking, horse trekking, if you're into the outdoors, great reason to come to Tagong. Otherwise, you could spend a day or two here at the monastery and the surrounding environment.